Good evening, sports fanatics, and welcome to the only news desk that dares to speak truth to power in the world of hockey. Are you tired of the same old narrative? Do you ever just throw your hands up in exasperation, wondering why some teams seem destined to repeat history? Well, tonight, we're not just discussing potential trade. We're dissecting philosophy, a crucial crossroads for one of the NHL's most storied franchises. We're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs and their star forward, Mitch Marner. Is it possible that letting him walk could be the best thing for them? Or is it pure lunacy? Let's peel back the layers and see what the numbers really say. The looming salary cap minefield. Anchor. Folks, gather round, because the 2025 offseason isn't just another summer for free agency. It's a salary cap minefield. With the cap set to explode, Brian Burke's famous credo, the biggest mistakes get made on July 1st, is about to be more relevant than ever. Why, you ask? Because the pool of high-level free agents is, well, it's thin. Sigh. In fact, it's startlingly shallow. This year, the player drawing the most attention, the biggest fish in this decidedly small pond, is Mitch Marner. But behind him, there's significant drop-off to names like Matt Duchene, Sam Bennett, John Tavares, Brock Boeser, and Aaron Ekblad. Now, compare that to July 1st, 2026. Picture this. A potential lineup of Connor McDavid, Kirill Kaprizov, Jack Eichel, Artemi Panarin, Kyle Connor, and John Carlson all potentially available. Some certainly will extend with their current clubs, but the mere list of players who could be on the market a year from now should make every general manager pause. It should make them think twice, 3 times, maybe even a dozen times before signing a bloated, potentially franchise-crippling contract this July. The simple reality is this. The supply of truly valuable players in 2025 is incredibly short. And when supply is short and demand is high, what happens? Overpayments. It's almost guaranteed. And to win the Stanley Cup, you need players who overperform their contracts. You need efficiency. Every single inefficient contract is a burden, a chain around a team's neck, holding them back from true contention. The power of contract efficiency. Learning from the best. Anchor. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but what about tax-free states? Don't they have an advantage? And yes, there's merit to that. But here's the kicker. Many of the top players, the real difference makers, actually overperform the delta between their contract value and that tax-free discount. This isn't just about avoiding taxes. It's about maximizing every single dollar. Let me give you a prime example. Sam Reinhart, a pivotal piece for the Florida Panthers, likely would have commanded a $10 million average annual value on the open market, but he took $8.625 million to remain with the Panthers. And according to my model, a model that doesn't just look at stats, but at true on-ice impact, Reinhart's actual value is closer to $12.6 million. Think about that. The Panthers are getting an extra $2.6 million in value, on top of the tax discount. That's how you build a winner. We see similar situations with Brandon Hagel, Nikita Kucherov, Thomas Harley, and Shea Theodore. These aren't just good players. They're savvy investments that provide immense bang for their buck. And it's not just tax-free states benefiting. Elite players in non-tax-free states are also dramatically overperforming their contracts. Look at Cale Makar, Adam Fox, Seth Jarvis, and Nico Hischier. They're all delivering far more value than their paychecks suggest. Perhaps the most stunning example? The Edmonton Oilers, where Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard, and Zach Hyman are significantly overperforming their contract values. Even Draisaitl's mammoth extension is expected to be efficient when it kicks in. And for Evan Bouchard, any contract with an AAV below $9.5 million will be considered efficient. That, my friends, is how you create depth. That's how you contend year after year. The Marner conundrum. A $14 million question mark? Anchor. So, let's bring it back to Toronto and the man of the hour, Mitch Marner. Reports suggest he's looking for a deal in the neighborhood of $14 million per year. $14 million. But an efficient contract for a player of Marner's caliber, based on the numbers, would be closer to $12 million. That $2 million difference? In a cap-strapped league, that's not pocket change. It's the difference between building a balanced, cup-contending team and being perpetually stuck in the middle. And then there's a chatter around Sam Bennett, another player represented by Darren Ferris, who's rumored to be seeking around $9 million AAV. Let that sink in. $9 million for a player whose career high is a mere 51 points? That would put him on par with an elite second-line center, despite producing like a low-end second liner or a high-end third liner. While I readily acknowledge the legitimate arguments for Marner's exceptional regular season value and Bennett's undeniable playoff grit, any team with serious Stanley Cup aspirations simply cannot afford to pay these players 10% above their actual value. It's not just a bad deal. It's a strategic misstep that could haunt them for years. Given Toronto's current cap structure, extending Marner at that rumored price tag is highly unlikely to result in long-term success. It would be prohibitive, a financial anchor that would severely limit their ability to balance the rest of the lineup. If Marner truly wants to play for a contending team and win, then contract efficiency isn't just important, it's paramount. If we apply the same efficiency as the upcoming Draisaitl contract, a comparable that Marner's camp is reportedly using, anything more than $12 million would effectively handicap Toronto's ability to contend. And that's if Marner performs to Draisaitl's playoff level, which, let's be brutally honest, has yet to occur. For Marner to have a truly valuable contract, one that mirrors the impact of a Reinhart, Kucherov, or Kaprizov, he'd need to sign for around $10 million AAV. Anything more is a luxury the Maple Leafs simply cannot afford if they're serious about winning. A necessary shakeup. Toronto's path forward. Anchor. It has never been clearer. A major shakeup is needed in Toronto. While there have been countless Knicks trades that could have allowed Toronto to make significant changes over the past few years, they're now faced with the grim reality that a superstar caliber player will likely be lost for nothing. However, and this is crucial, Toronto absolutely cannot afford to extend Marner on an inefficient contract, especially when his inconsistent playoff performances are factored in. So how should they proceed? With the contract for both Marner and John Tavares expiring, the Leafs suddenly find themselves with significant cap space to maneuver. They won't replace Marner's value with one player, no, but they can and should redistribute that wealth throughout the lineup, creating a more balanced, more dangerous team. Tavares, bless his heart, is likely to extend in Toronto, and the rumored AAV is around $5 million. That, my friends, is an efficient contract for a middle six center, particularly one who scored 38 goals in 2024-25. The Leafs should also wisely avoid a bridge deal for restricted free agent Matthew Knies, instead opting for a long-term deal in the neighborhood of $8.5 million AAV. Think about it. Combined, that costs less than Marner's rumored ask, and the combined value of Knies and Tavares would actually outweigh the value of Marner. It's simple, effective math. Toronto should also confidently expect Easton Cowan to contribute in a middle six role on his entry-level contract next season. And it is almost imperative that Toronto GM Brad Treliving trades two of David Kamp's, Kaye Jarnkrok, Max Domi, and Nick Robertson. The cap space freed up by these moves could then be strategically used to sign players like Matt Duchene, Brad Marchand, or Pius Suter, all of whom will provide significantly more value in elevated roles. This set of restructures would finally allow Toronto to boast three genuinely productive lines. Remember the Florida Panthers' third line? They were the difference makers in the Leafs series loss. And why? Because efficient contracts at the top of Florida's roster allowed for a far more balanced approach to their lineup. It's a blueprint for success. The Sam Bennett trap, a cautionary tale. Anchor. And speaking of the Panthers, there are rumblings that the Leafs have an interest in Sam Bennett. While it's easy to understand the appeal, let's pump the brakes for a second and remember the player Bennett was before Florida. In Treliving's prior role as Flames GM, he actually traded Bennett out of Calgary for spare parts because the player simply couldn't find his game. Bennett is a perfect fit in Florida, no doubt, but much of his value comes from the extracurricular activities, the agitation, the grit, rather than consistent offensive production. And if those extracurricular activities were to be more heavily penalized in a new market, well, their value would surely diminish, wouldn't they? Consider this stark comparison. Tavares notched 38 goals and 74 points this season and is likely to sign for around $5 million. Bennett, conversely, notched a career high of 51 points this season, while Bennett is younger, signing him to a contract worth 1.5 times Tavares until he reaches Tavares' age, having produced a mere 0.68 points per game in Florida and just 0.48 points per game over his entire career. Would be an absolute catastrophe for Toronto's cap and long-term competitiveness. Florida is absolutely right not to want to pay more than $7 million per year for Bennett, which would already be slightly bloated. Given Florida's sustained success over the past few years, the Maple Leafs would be incredibly wise to follow those signals. A $7.5 million AAV for Bennett is inefficient, but perhaps manageable if the Leafs genuinely believe Bennett's extracurriculars won't draw more attention in a market where hockey is first, second, and third in coverage. But should Bennett's camp push for anything more, the Leafs will be far, far better off looking elsewhere, targeting Pius Suter or Matt Duchene on July 1st, and perhaps orchestrating a trade for Mason Marchment with Dallas. Would be a theoretical example of a far more balanced and sensible approach. The ruthless pursuit of the cup. Anchor. Regardless of which specific players are signed or added via trade, the Maple Leafs have one overarching imperative. They need to balance their forward depth and refrain from signing inefficient contracts. There are simply too many on the books already, and the Leafs would be well advised to extricate themselves from a couple of them. The best teams don't contend solely because of one or two superstar players. That's true even the Oilers, though having McDavid and Draisaitl certainly helps. Instead, the best teams contend year after year because their key players consistently overperform their contracts, and the depth throughout the lineup provides quality minutes due to shrewd management being able to acquire better players that provide true balance. Look at current examples. Florida's effective third line, or Edmonton's crucial depth that includes Corey Perry, Jake Wallman, and Connor Brown. And because of the efficient contract for Roop Hintz, Thomas Harley, and Matt Duchene, Dallas was able to acquire a bona fide superstar in Mikko Rantanen. That's how you build a winner. Toronto needs to adopt a ruthless mentality, the kind that defined the Tampa Bay Lightning during their consecutive Stanley Cup runs, and the kind that has underpinned the Vegas Golden Knights since their inception. If a player isn't willing to sign for what the team needs to be successful, then they are simply not going to be a Leaf. Significant trade protection for anyone outside the top 6 forwards or top 4 defensemen needs to be a relic of the past. 8 or 10-team no-trade clauses for third-line players might be manageable, but the days of giving bottom-pair defenders and the likes of David Kampf, Kaye Jarnkrok, and Ryan Reeves any level of trade protection must end. They absolutely cannot handicap their ability to make crucial moves by providing trade protection to players who are easily replaceable every single summer. For the Leafs to finally win, to finally bring the cup back to Toronto, they need to stay laser-focused on the ruthless pursuit of contract efficiency. And yes, that likely means losing pure talent in the short term, but is a necessary sacrifice to create a more balanced, long-term approach, an approach that has worked so well for other championship-caliber clubs. The choice is clear, Leafs Nation. Will they finally choose to be ruthless, or will they continue down the path of well-intentioned, but ultimately flawed generosity? The fate of the franchise hangs in the balance. And that's our deep dive for tonight. What do you think about the Leafs' monumental decision regarding Mitch Marner? Do you agree that efficiency should trump all else? Or is talent worth any price? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We absolutely devour every single one of them. If you found this analysis insightful and engaging, hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more exclusive insights. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you're always ahead of the game. Until next time, stay passionate, stay informed, and keep the greatest game on ice alive.